Medieval people obviously didn't have plastic wrap, but did they have anything that could do the same kind of job? Plastic wrap's one of those things in the Western world that we take for granted. It's used to wrap all sorts of things. It's very thin film plastic and it clings to itself. In the UK it's called clingfilm. I think in North America it's called saran wrap and various other names like plastic wrap. But it is quite useful and it is used in lots and lots of different ways in the kitchen. But it's not biodegradable, it's not very green, and we throw it away. What would medieval people have used instead? Medieval people had the same kind of needs as we do today. They needed some way of keeping flies off food, trying to stop water evaporating from it, trying to preserve the food that they had. And they also needed to be able to make it themselves. And arguably the solution they came up with is greener, more environmentally friendly, and smells nicer, and is biodegradable. And what did they do? Well, let me show you. This is medieval plastic wrap. It is, in fact, linen or any kind of cloth. You could use silk, but that would be terribly expensive. This is 8-ounce linen, so it's fairly thin. It's kind of shirt weight linen. It's unbleached linen. You don't need to bleach it. Linen was the typical fabric in the medieval period rather than cotton. Linen is made from flax, so you could make it yourself. This is quite a fine linen. It doesn't actually need to be a heavyweight fabric at all for this. It just needs to be something that will basically hold the molten beeswax together, creates a matrix. You don't need to hem it because the wax holds it together. And you cut the shape you want of that, and then you simply soak it in melted beeswax. I did this over a fire. You soak it until it can't take up any more, and it creates this waxy fabric kind of material. And it is fantastic because it has its sort of tackiness, and you can place it over a bowl. Imagine that was a bowl with food in it. You can just simply place it over the bowl. You can wrap it round, and the thing is fairly well sealed, not completely sealed, not like modern cling film, but it is fairly well sealed against insects and against too much evaporation. And you'd obviously take it off again, fold it up, put it away for reuse. So it's quite different from modern day plastic wrap, which is generally thrown away and just goes to landfill. If you've decided this is a bit tired, well, you just heat it up in an oven, heat it up over a flame. The beeswax will slightly adjust itself in the weave, and you've got a fresh piece of whatever they called this, beeswax linen material to use again. And ultimately this is biodegradable. It's a rather lovely material actually. It almost feels a little bit leathery. But it's quite good for wrapping cheese, it's quite good for wrapping fruit and that kind of stuff. It's not going to keep things dry if they're dunked in water, but it will certainly keep the rain and damp off for a period of time. And if it's all you've got, then that's what you have to use. It also has a lovely smell, which is one of the things I find interesting about the medieval period. We often think of the medieval period as filled with stinks and smells and effluent. And of course it was. Everywhere was more used to the smells. But the smell of beeswax was probably very familiar. And the smell of beeswax on linen is actually really quite pleasant. And I actually prefer it to some of the more artificial scents and smells that you get today. Here's another pot. You can do the same kind of thing with this. If you were going to cook with it, just goes over the top, squidge it over, like that, and it kind of holds itself. It's slightly self-tacky. It creates quite a good seal, and it's good for preserving whatever's in that pot. Very straightforward, very reusable. It does use quite a bit of beeswax though, so it wasn't super cheap. So it was probably proportionately much more expensive than plastic wrap that we use today. But it's reusable, ultimately it's biodegradable, and if this was thrown in a midden pit, it would eventually get consumed by microorganisms and go back into the earth. So you could argue that medieval plastic wrap is better for the world, better for the environment. It actually smells quite nice as well because of the beeswax, and actually looks rather cool too.